Let's get started. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Ochoa. I am the SVP of Client Strategy here at Ansira, and I'm very excited to facilitate this discussion on one of our most critical challenges facing our industry, which is measuring ROI in channel partner marketing programs. So before we get started, I'd love to get a quick pulse from you guys. On a scale of 1 to 5, where do you consider your ROI maturity to be? Anywhere from not tracking it at all the way up to you have a confident and repeatable process with actionable insights. So feel free to put 1 through 5 in the chat and let us know where you stand. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle the next hour. We know that turning channel marketing data into actionable insights isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's absolutely critical for securing budget, optimizing programs, and demonstrating real business impact. But here's the thing, challenges and solutions look very different depending on what industry your business is in. So that's exactly why I brought together this incredible team of strategists and analysts from Ansira, and each of them brings a unique perspective based on the industries that they are serving day in and day out. So let me introduce you to the team. The talented individuals joining us today make up our client strategy and our data science and insights team. As part of our Ansira X offering, we partner with clients to identify business challenges, analyze relevant data, and design practical marketing solutions that drive measurable outcomes for you. So today we have Melissa Pringle, who serves our manufacturing sector, David Garsh, who works with beverage and alcohol, Kristin Cardona, who works with CPG, retail, and hospitality, Heather Dale, who works with automotive, Dwenya Pouncy, who works with technology and telecom, and Eric Swayne, who leads our data science and insights team. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so here's how we're going to approach today. We're going to start by exploring the universal challenges, those pain points that seem to plague every industry when it comes to ROI measurement. And then we're going to dive into industry-specific perspectives from the team, because let's be honest, measuring ROI for a beverage supplier looks very different than measuring it for an insurance agent network, if you will. And this isn't just a presentation, it's a conversation. So please keep those chats coming for us. Share your challenges, share your wins. If you're having any aha moments, if something resonates, just let us know. If you tried something similar and it didn't work, tell us about it. I feel like the best insights come from the collective wisdom that we have within this virtual room today. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to break the day up into kind of 3 buckets with 3 universal challenges. And the first one is marketing attribution. This is all about creating clear visibility for the enterprise, for you guys, when you invest in local marketing at the partner level. You need to know what's working, not just globally, but locally. So let me ask you this. How often do you hear from your leadership? How do we know if our investment with partner 1 or partner 2 is actually moving the needle in their market? This is the classic attribution headache, and most organizations have spreadsheets and reports flying around, but tying that enterprise spend to local outcomes is messy, and data comes from all directions. You have paid search or local events or social campaigns, and rolling it up to the enterprise so they can see the holistic picture, that's really the tough part. So we're going to dig in there today. Next up is partner level performance. We've all seen it. Local partners want assurance that they want insights that show them in black and white if their marketing efforts are generating real outcomes. So if I'm a local dealership, an agent, a franchisee, I'm asking, is the money, time, and effort worth it, and the campaigns that I'm doing worth it? But partners often lack the resources or the data literacy to analyze results themselves. And when attribution is unclear, partners aren't confident in reinvesting, which means lost momentum for the overall program. And then finally, our third bucket is program ROI, the big picture. And this is where the enterprise steps back and asks, is our overall channel partner marketing program driving value at scale? And what is our total return? It's one thing to measure success at the individual partner level, but it's quite another to roll everything up and know with confidence that your overall strategy is working. The challenge is not just aggregating the data, but interpreting it in a way that influences future strategy and budget and renewed executive buy-in. So we're going to dig in there too. All right, so we're going to get started with the first bucket of marketing attribution. And I'm actually going to start with you, Heather. I know that working in automotive, it's a prime example of how difficult it can be to measure attribution. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Thanks, Amy. I think this is a great place to start today. So, in automotive marketing, as Amy just said, attribution is notoriously complex. There's no single straight line from ad spend to sale. A shopper might see a national brand message, research locally, browse multiple digital platforms, and ultimately purchase in store. And really, what this leads to is little visibility into which touchpoint was actually decisive. Tiers often will mean different things across different verticals, but in automotive, we see them as a layered ecosystem. Tier one builds demand, tier two focuses on regional messaging, tier three focuses on low funnel tactics, but it can be difficult to connect the dots between them. Furthermore, in automotive, we see a lot of fragmented dealer systems. So this can lead to inconsistent data hygiene, siloed tech stacks, which really make it convoluted to track customer journeys end to end. And the third key component here for automotive is the after sales blind spots. Service lane marketing is often undermeasured compared to new car sales, despite its revenue potential. So bringing this all together, too many marketers still aim for perfect attribution, but in automotive, that's again a really intricate game. The customer journey is often complex and the data is siloed. Attempting to assign credit at every single touch point can lead to analysis paralysis. It ignores the reality of the fragmented consumer journeys and data limitations. It's important to reframe how we approach the ROI challenge today. Traditionally, attribution asks, what caused the sale? But in today's fragmented and dynamic environments, the question really leads to incomplete answers.
So what are you doing to help clients with this challenge?
Yeah. At Ansira, we help clients move towards contribution analysis, asking instead what contributed to better performance. This shift acknowledges that shopper intent is fluid, it's not a static event. The most effective strategies, speaking to the automotive vertical again, ensure dealers diversify their funnel focus from tier one, tier two, and tier three advertising, reaching shoppers at every phase of their buying journey. It's also critical to recognize tiers are inherently different, not just in automotive, but across every vertical. Each tier targets distinctive need states, uses different tactics, and operates at different stages of the purchase cycle. Understanding this helps guide fund distribution, sets realistic ROI expectations, and keeps strategies native to each tier, ultimately driving more meaningful business outcomes. As we explore solutions today, I ask everyone to keep in mind how fund utilization plays such a vital role in enabling our partners. These funds ensure dealers and retailers have the resources to activate strategies that reflect this tiered complexity and, again, ultimately support that broader ROI journey. And Amy, to your ultimate question, at Ansira, we don't chase perfect data. Instead, we build flexible frameworks that work with the data that you do have. So, as my colleagues walk through solutions, let's stay grounded in the reality of the challenges that we face and the opportunity to solve them with smarter and more adaptive approaches.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Dave and let's talk about the beverage alcohol space. How do you build ROI proof in that three-tiered world with the supplier and the distributor and the retailer and all the data fragmentation that comes with it?
Yeah, thanks. This is certainly a big one for BevAlc, and as you said, we operate in that three-tier space. We have suppliers, distributors, and retailers. Each of those tiers has its own data, its own systems, and really its own priorities. So when it comes to measuring ROI, we're not just dealing with fragmentation, we're dealing with a full-on data disconnect. Suppliers typically know how many cases they've shipped to the distributor, and the distributors will share back depletion data, which tells those suppliers how much product has moved out to the retailers. But after that, that's really where the trail goes cold. So even if a campaign gets a lot of attention, proving ROI at the shelf is a whole different story. We're making these big decisions really with partial visibility. And that's a tough spot to be in when we're trying to show impact. And really, how can you optimize spend if you don't know what's driving these actual sales?
So how are you solving for this?
That's why we lean into third party partnerships. We work with a lot of third party providers who help us fill in those blanks. So, for example, we can access scan data from retailers across the country down to the SKU level and use control versus expose market comparisons to see if our media or point of purchase efforts are driving lift. It's not perfect attribution, but it's strong directional proof. We also use tools that measure in store engagement, cameras and sensors that track how shoppers interact with our displays. Are they stopping? What's their dwell time? Did they pick up a product? This gives us real world feedback on asset performance. And then there's foot traffic. We can see if someone who saw a supplier's ad actually walked into a store or an on prem location. We don't know if they made a purchase, but it's a solid signal that our media is driving intent. And we also can work directly with retail media networks, which allows us to go even deeper, tying on platform impressions to actual in store purchases using loyalty data. That's really as close to closed loop as it gets within the BevAlc space. So I'd say we're not chasing perfect attribution. We're stacking these proof points. We're helping to build a case with the data that we can access and using that to guide strategy for our clients, optimize spend, and show real impact. I think that gets to the heart of the question you were asking me. It's not about solving for perfection, it's about building confidence through a smart, layered measurement.
I'd love to know if this is resonating with you guys out there in the audience. Are you trying any of these methods? Are you leaning into these partnerships that State's describing? So share an emoji or something in the chat. Let us know. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Dwenya and let's talk about the technology in the B2B space. Can you share some creative ways that you're solving the attribution problem when data is not available?
Great question, Amy. Before I dive in, did you all know that according to a recent Gartner study, proving ROI with analytics is a top 3 challenge for tech marketers, especially at companies that have $100 million plus in revenue. And in today's economic climate, it's even more challenging. So with that, in channel marketing, especially in tech, ROI isn't about just impressions or clicks. It's about how those marketing efforts actually drive revenue. But when partners don't share that closed loop data, similar to what Dave just talked about, or other factors that may prevent that sales from being shared, we lean into creative and smart methods to estimate impact, similar to what some of my other colleagues shared today. And that's where proxy ROI modeling comes into play. Proxy ROI modeling, in simple terms, means estimating the value of a marketing effort when you can't directly track sales. Now, let's talk through a common example that we see in technology, and the one we'll walk through is MDF-funded campaigns where we don't have the sales data available. But before I dive in, another quick fun fact. Did you know that 58% of tech marketers don't currently measure ROI for MD activities, according to Gartner? And the reason why is that 46% say that it's too hard to tell which activity, MDF support activities deliver that impact, according to Canalys. All right, so let's dive into our example. As the example is, we have a partner that's going to use their MDF funds to run a LinkedIn ad where they'll target IT decision makers. That ad will generate 200 leads. The partner doesn't report back on pipeline. So in this case, there's no way of you knowing how many of those leads turned into actual sales. So instead of guessing, you can use an average conversion rate and deal size to build a reasonable estimate of how much revenue that campaign likely influenced. To get there, you'll start by counting the leads, then you apply an estimated conversion rate. But for this example, we'll go ahead and use an average industry benchmark of 8% conversion rate and the average deal size of about $25,000. With that, we will be able to estimate that that pipeline influence was about 400,000. So 200 leads times that 8% average conversion rate will give you the 16 deals. From there, you take that 16 deals times the 25,000 and the deal size, and that gives you the estimated 400,000 in sales. So in addition to the scenario that I just walked through, there are other reasons that do contribute to why sales from MDF or other partner marketing activities aren't directly attributed to sales. And those include long buying cycles and complex sales paths. We know that's very true in the tech space. Limited visibility into partner CRM or some lead op data. Proof of performance often ends at the activity level metrics. In often cases, the processes are still very manual. People are still using emails, spreadsheets, and even Word documents to document and share data. Partners hesitate to share early pipeline details, and that often comes from internal competition. And then lastly, many programs don't require lead capture for demand generating activities. So now that we've talked through proxy modeling, let's talk about where that takes us. Proxy ROI modeling, it isn't the finish line, it is the starting block. It gives us the early indicators that we need to begin building a full funnel efficiency. From here, the goal is to use those insights to then guide smarter investment decisions, influence our partners' behavior, and mature our ROI strategy over time. It's about tracking what matters, when it matters, and evolving when we measure impact. So in diving into the maturity stages, at the start, you'll want to track metrics like MDF spend and revenue by partner. As you evolve, you'll dig deeper to monitor tactics by types and track engagement through like clicks, registrations from sources like LinkedIn, email, or webinars. Next, you move into the refinement stage. Here, your approach, you want to require lead uploads for demand generation activities. You also want to use lead capture forms and apply conversion benchmarks like your MQLs to your SQLs to then measure that effectiveness. And this can be solution through through lead capture and management modules, something we offer at Ansira. And then lastly, as you mature, you want to push those leads into your CRM or PRM to follow their journey through the sales cycle. And then finally, you want to optimize by pulling that data back into your MDF platform, giving partners full visibility into what's driving revenue. So to wrap this up and to answer your question, Amy, ROI doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be powerful. You want to start simple, even out the full data. Even without full data, Proxy ROI gives you a way to estimate impact and guide smarter decisions. Treat your partners as data contributors. They're the ones that's doing the hard work. So you want to make sure you're working with them. And then over time, you want to build towards that closed loop attribution with the CRM integration. It's all about progress, not perfection. And every step forward moves closer to that improved visibility, efficiency, and influence.
Thank you. And thank you so much for laying out this path. I'd love to know where everybody thinks they are in your journey right now. So type start or refine or optimize in that chat and let us know. Okay, Eric, moving over to you. What if you know your ROI is not where you want it to be? So you have some data. How do you know where you should focus?
Sure, thanks. When we talk about understanding ROI, it's very often brought up when an enterprise doesn't like what the metrics currently say. Could be because the return isn't high enough, or it's just not qualified at all. The critical point to know is that not every marketing action is about closing a deal or completing a sale. In fact, we commonly do this throughout B2B and B2C. I've included some examples here. Let's take the B2B example of a SaaS company. They might start with an account-based media campaign that would direct click through to a lead capture landing page. From there, you might have that lead as a marketing qualified lead go through a nurturing journey via email or other channels. As that lead responds, perhaps they get an opportunity identified for a sales qualified lead transition. And then finally, there are sales actions that take them to an actual deal closure. Along every step in that chain, there are different metrics being measured. and different outcomes we want to see, but every single link in that chain is not the one that closes the sale. In fact, every link does its job best if we effectively hand off from one link to another in that chain. The same goes for B2C, and I've included another example for an auto service company. You might have an intent-based search campaign, and that would take you to a store locator page where that user might find their nearest location. From then, maybe they schedule an appointment through a web or mobile app. And then that app causes them to receive email or SMS reminders of that appointment. And then finally, we hope they do visit the location and complete that service. All of those steps have different jobs to do. And it's important to know what links are in your chain and how you measure them as they move users forward. So when we talk about understanding that chain, it's important to start by knowing what are the links in the chain and how does each one bring our audiences closer to the goal. This is where measurement frameworks are absolutely critical. We get the chance to get clarity on why does each step exist and how are we going to evaluate each one for success. Then we really need to know how does each link connect together. Every step in the marketing process receives something and it hands off something, potentially to another link in the chain. What are those things being transacted through that step? And when evaluating each link, we need to measure it in its own context. For example, we would never evaluate a media landing page based on how it attracts organic search traffic, because that's not its job. Its job is to convert what traffic does arrive at that page. And finally, we need to know our own strengths and weaknesses. It's really fair to say that enterprises can often be focused on just sales. And that myopia can lead you down a path that ignores every other thing that prepares an audience to get ready to buy from you. At the same time, it's very easy, sometimes for marketing teams, to have this success by PowerPoint paradigm where we want to show off what's done on a slide and we tend to confuse successful execution with successful return. Both of those are very real tendencies that have to be balanced in the enterprise. And a great way to do that is to diagnose your value chain of your ROI and test each component in a stepwise fashion. So you look at each link in your chain and measure it against its own metrics, because it's not the entire chain that's the problem. It could be just one step. It might be a form, a click-through CTA, a page layout. It might be that your page is not mobile compliant, or the creative doesn't match with your audience's demographics. All of those elements contribute to overall ROI, but they need to be evaluated separately.
That's great, Eric. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to switch, moving on from attribution, and we're going to start talking about partner level performance. And I'm going to pass this over to Kristin. And I'd love to hear from you on what are some best practices you are seeing that are being utilized to build trust and transparency with the partner in terms of their ROI and their reporting.
Yeah, that's a great question, Amy. This is really important because building out trust and transparency really starts with the recognition that they're not all the same and they don't all operate the same. So if you think about it, there's something called a sophistication gap, as I would say, and that is existing with your partner. So if you think the partner network spans from tech-savvy multi-location operators to those single location businesses that I'm sure all of you know still prefer to pick up the phone call and do that over an email is a little tough in measuring ROI the same way with that type of, like I said, sophistication gap. So once there's an understanding and an agreement on this, you can then work to really build and design measurement around that reality. So this will help with the trust and the transparency, but it's going to also help with that ROI maturity that we saw at the beginning and taking you from a 1 to a 5. So since partner networks run the gamut, you simply can start by having a tiered measurement approach that's going to respect all the capability differences for each partner without compromising that rigor that's out there. So there's 3 simple ways to categorize these tiers. There's the foundational, the standard, and the advanced. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these and a few avenues that you can address. So first is foundational. You'll want to have a baseline for all your partners to work off of. Eric, as well as Dwenya, talked a little bit about KPIs. It's really something that you need to do from a foundational perspective and take and measure what are those 3 to 5 standard KPIs that would matter across all of your partners. This then gives that common language for performance, and it also allows depth where there's availability. So in the case of ROI, consistent metrics always will beat the novelty piece when you're attempting to build trust. So just remember, it's also important with KPIs to make sure that they're obviously measurable, attributable, and then also tied to whatever outcomes you have. So we had a financial services client who used just a really simple set of KPIs. What they did is their measurement was really concise, and it had, like I said, just a simple set of KPIs with 4 metrics. So the first thing they did is they monitored their campaign participation rate. And what this did is it allowed for them to understand who was opting into and who was executing the programs and how consistently they were doing that as well. The second metric they used was the cost per lead. And what they were able to do here was measure the marketing efficiency across the tactics and the markets. The third one you'll see on this slide was looking at the lead to close conversion, so they could understand how it ties the market efforts to the true revenue impact and not just the top of funnel activity. And then the last one is they developed a consistent way to track and monitor their partner satisfaction scores. So it's remember that if your partners don't trust the program and if they don't feel it adds value, then their participation is going to drop, and in turn your ROI will follow. So our client, using these 4 metrics, was able, I should say, to compare 2,000 plus locations across their portfolio. So they in turn were able to identify the scalable best practices that they could then take and they could execute and implement to further drive ROI for the company. There were really simple visuals, clear definitions, reoccurring cadence, and all of this allowed them to see their trends and spot some of the issues that were coming up early on. And then, of course, they could engage in a consistent manner. Suddenly, the measurement stopped feeling like that academic aspect, and it started to drive real decisions that impacted not just their business, but also supported them with just, again, 4 simple KPIs. So KPIs are definitely important, but for someone who has a more sophisticated partner network, a simple model is not going to be enough. And this is where the standard measurement plan comes into play. And it's the next level of tiered reporting. And this is where you want to kind of quote unquote show the math, if you will, and make the data usable and not just available. So typically this is done with just simplified scorecards with a right size view. And it provides, a quick insight, deeper dashboards, and this allows the team to come up with those practical narratives that they need in their QBR discussions, in turn allowing them to further drive action. So the standard structure to measure is also the most common approach that we see, but it is important to note that reporting visibility is definitely something you need to keep in mind. So you need to make sure that the end users have that visibility into reporting. And in some cases, the reporting stops at the distributor level, but the local retailer or dealer or contractor is being asked to invest. So give all your partners simple, plain language dashboards and show them what's in the market, and make sure people who are being asked to invest can actually see the numbers that they are looking for. So if I'm a dealer, I should not have to guess where the results live. I need to know what ran, what it costs, and what moved the needle. Ideally, it would be tied to the sales or the visit data, if you will, that they would already know at each month. So if you do this, you'll remove that mystery, if you will, and you'll remove that skepticism then the trust will really start to come to follow for local users. So let's assume that you have the availability to offer the right reporting and visibility to your partners, but you have a more complex program, maybe with supporting systems. Ideally here, you would want to use the advanced structure of measurement. And this measurement approach would include real-time dynamic dashboards with things like predictive and analytics. The full transparency and the diagnostic power will allow for continuous improvement, and partners can optimize things like their media mix, local offers, or even operational follow-through. So ultimately, when partners know how to move up their measurement tiers with the right tools, the behaviors, and the data quality steps that are required, they will then see the measurement of ROI as a collaborative progress and not just something that's compliant. So as you look to develop your measurement model, remember remember that measurement models are not just measurement is not just a service, I should say, but it's not just a set. It is a service. It's not just a set of reports. So use it as a way to build trust, grow that ROI maturity to a 5, and if partners understand what's being measured, they'll continue to see how it connects. They'll know exactly what to do to improve. And then you will have developed one solid way to build that foundation for not just transparency, but also for trust.
Thanks, Kristin. Melissa, I know you have some thoughts here as well. Do you want to layer on?
I do. I do. One way to get started might be to pilot a program and kind of test into ROI tracking. So that definitely should start with planning. So pick one of those measurement challenges that hurts the most. And it can be various consistent partner reporting or proving ROI to leadership and focus there. So, Kristin outlined a few of her financial clients that, what the KPIs they started with. So you'll look at standing up just a small enterprise-led pilot, identify 10 to 20 willing partners, could potentially be smaller, but you want them to align to those standardized KPIs. You want to identify what tactics are in market and then collaborate on that data sharing piece. It's important, again, to match those KPIs to tactics, so we don't judge awareness on leads. And that's where, the education and the repeat education comes into play. More unsophisticated marketers, which, a lot of our medium to smaller partners likely fall into, they don't necessarily understand campaign implementation structure. So they don't realize that when you're setting these campaigns up, they're required to be aligned to specific measurement outcomes. So they're going to want and execute awareness tactics, but expect leads. So once you've outlined those KPIs, you'll pair that measurement framework with the sales or the visit data that local users already trust. So keep visibility into a basic dashboard, and then consider following up by sending kind of short weekly what changed and why readouts. So that'll keep folks informed and it'll keep them involved. That's going to help partners translate those digital results into business impacts. They don't default to only what feels tangible. The goal, again, I know we've been saying it, it's not perfect measurements, it's better decisions. So when partners see a clear line from the activities to the outcomes, they'll start investing more in what actually works. And when leadership sees clean ROI readouts, they're more likely to increase funding. So that's just kind of one way of, planning first. Pilots can operationalize that tiered measurement and really build trust quickly across the entire network.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our third category, which is that overall program ROI. And I'm going to toss it back to you, Melissa. What challenges do you see when the enterprises are running a multitude of programs across like product lines or business units?
Yeah, totally. And we see this often in the manufacturing and building space. Brands are going to have multiple product lines. They have various teams supporting each product line. They have their individual goals. And then they also have a 3-tiered system, like Dave mentioned, where you have a and a dealer and a brand. When you have this many layers, each team kind of does their own thing a lot of times, and the partner experience gets really noisy and confusing. And honestly, it could end up being more costly than intended if the teams aren't aligned. You'll see a few consistent challenges show up. So if multiple product lines push different offers to the same partner and the partner optimizes for the richest rebate, not the right behavior, it creates confusion in market and it makes it harder to read impacts with any confidence. If left unchecked, brands could find themselves unknowingly and negatively impacting margin. First is kind of that duplicate spend and cannibalization. So this is a classic, like we're bidding against ourselves. Separate teams might buy the same keywords or audiences, driving up cost and frequency without seeing incremental lift. So the partner experiences clutter, not clarity, and then trust starts to erode when the results don't line up with what they're seeing locally. Another one is conflicting KPIs and vernacular. A lot of the instances, the internal teams are using different words. One may call a click a lead, another reserves lead for a qualified hand raiser, or you might have dealers that aren't familiar with any of the vernacular. So then you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. So partners need a common language for performance, or they stop believing this story. Another one is fragmented data. So without a clean line from investment to outcome, you can't reallocate or optimize those dollars with confidence. So this gap is exactly where people end up defaulting to what's tangible, like a print piece, because they can see it. They can see folks walking in with it, even if it may not actually be moving results. Last is that just inconsistent partner experience. Brands who are operating in silos may have different marketing or different media calendars. They might have different portals where they're asking their partners to log into or check results. And KPIs may vary. So that's going to make it really execution heavy. When it's hard for, partners to participate, then their participation is going to drop. They've got a lot of stuff going on, and then that ROI is going to follow. So consistency really isn't just operational, it's how you maintain credibility.
So how are you trying to solve this, Melissa?
So one thing that we talk to a lot of brands in my industry specifically about is designating a holistic owner. So somebody who owns the dealer and partner experience, similar the way brands often have a team who owns the customer experience. So making sure you're aligning the entire enterprise, anybody who has these dealer partner relationships, with one visible plan and make that accessible to the partners so they know what's coming and why. It removes collisions, it sequences the work, and it lowers the noise, but every unit can still meet their goals without stepping on each other. Another is that unified measurement framework and taxonomy. So standardizing those 3 to 5 KPIs, using the same definitions, the same math, so results are comparable. So when everybody is showing the math in the same way, trust and transparency go up. So partners get more active in campaign deployment because they're actually starting to see results and they understand what they're seeing. Another one is central governance and guardrails, especially around incentives and funding.